What if the average adult male in the United States visited Pornhub every week of 2019? Could it be true? Well, let's take a look at the data. You might be surprised to learn that Pornhub itself publishes annual traffic statistics, and in 2019, actually just a couple months ago in December, they reported that 42 billion visits occurred to Pornhub throughout the year. 42 billion. It's not a small number. Now, I ought to mention that visits is not the same as views. If you visit YouTube once, you likely went there because you wanted to view a video. But you actually might have viewed 10 perhaps, or 20 the next day. And so generally, views is going to be larger than visits. So even in this case, 42 billion visits occurred. I wonder how many views. So in our attempt to figure out whether our claim is true, let's first take one step by estimating the number of visits that occurred in the United States. Wouldn't you know, Pornhub also publishes their top 20 countries by traffic, and this chart represents 79%, the top in fact, with the United States being the very top. But they don't provide relative scale here, although it is assumed by the breakdown, and assuming this is truly the relative scale, we can infer it by the shape, and we can learn that the United States represents about 26% of the total daily, or of the total viewership, which in particular means about 10 billion visits of the 42 billion. So we don't have to stop there because Pornhub gives us more. They give us the age breakdown of their visitors. And in the United States, for example, we can see they report 15% of their United States visitors are 18 to 24 years old. So with that in mind, we can then break down the number of visitors by their age group. And you can review all of these charts and provided by Pornhub visiting these links here, just like up above. But we can continue on because they also provide the proportion of female visitors by country, and in the United States in particular, 30% came from female visitors, and then 70% are male visitors. So applying that breakdown from male and female, we can split up those 10 billion visits by male and female. Now, I will say there's an assumption here that the 30% women to 70% male applying to all age group or age ranges equally is an assumption, but using the data that we have, it's the best that I can do at this point. So at this point, we ought to then move on and get a picture of how many people in the United States represent these categories in an attempt to get an average. So looking to the United States Census Bureau, they have a pretty powerful tool that gives an estimate on a daily level. So looking at the precise date of the report, December 11th, 2019, the U.S. Census Bureau's estimate of the U.S. population was 329 million people. Thankfully, they give us even more data. They have the the population breakdown by age and gender. But this only extends to year 2018. So we're going to have to do some more estimation here. But for the year in 2018, there were 6.6% of the total population was age 0 male, and then 0.57 was age 0 female, and so for all the ages. So if the relative breakdown between male and female for each age isn't that different from 2018, the assumption then would be that we can apply it to 2019 to get an estimate of the total population for each age. And that's what I've done here. I will say there is some rounding error as all of these percents add up to 100%, or 100%, 0.02%, a little bit too much, but that 0.02% is only about 60,000 out of 329 million. So more caveats, but using the best of what we can. Then regrouping each age into the same categories as that of the Pornhub report, we get these really as the populations within each age group here. So with that, we can then move on and actually get averages here, an estimate of the individuals in 2019 by age and gender. So dividing the number of visits up in step 1 by the population in step 2 by age group, we get these average visits for the year. So in particular for this category here, males ages 18 to 24, each one visited on average 72 times. As for those in the next category, 103 visits per person throughout the year. Less for females, we can see here. And I also ought to mention that because Pornhub claims that none of their visitors, or at least they don't provide info, but they're mysteriously absent visitors but from age 0 to 17, minors, we can't provide info on that, and we can only assume then that all of their visitors are older. I think you and I both know that there are plenty of people in this age range who claim to be in this category, but because of not being allowed to view Pornhub's content being younger than 18, I'm assuming based on this, they don't provide that data. So these numbers ought to be pulled down to truly reflect reality. But once again, using the data provided to us, this is our best estimate. So the final step then would be to divide the yearly average by the number of weeks in the year, which is just over 52, to get the estimate of the number of weeks, or the number of visits per week per person in this age group. And you'll notice here, each of these numbers larger than 1, which indicates to us that the average 18-year-old through to 54-year-old visits Pornhub more than once a week on average, or visited more than once a week on average in 2019. Pretty astounding estimate there. This will once again likely get pulled down a bit by there being younger people, but overall, a pretty powerful estimation there. So with that, I want to make some final thoughts here to leave you with. Once again, I have to mention that these are estimates using the best data that I have available to me. But once again, I'm amazed by what they say this estimate gives. And I ought to remind that these are visits that we're talking about here. How many views do you think happened throughout the year? Each week, in fact, of these pornographic videos. What's going on in those is not worth, or ought not to be discussed here. And then I also need to remind us that this is only Pornhub. It is a very large pornographic website, but it is not the only one by any stretch of the imagination. What about all the other porn sites? How many, if the average American person visits the Pornhub this regularly, what about if you factor in all the other porn sites? With this in mind, I think it almost goes without saying that the porn problem on our hands is quite a bit bigger, amazingly bigger than we might have ever realized. Now, once again, I don't want to point fingers or cast shame, because the truth is I was one of these people. I was in these categories. In fact, I don't think I would be that far off. In fact, I probably visited more. Factor in all the other porn sites. This was my life, and I think it's a life for so many of us. But I want to emphasize that this doesn't have to be the end for us. Freedom is possible. Perhaps you'd be interested in checking out my book to hear my story of what took me as a young man like this to a person who fights to counteract pornography. Could it be that freedom's possible? Could it be that the Lord actually is with you? Could it be that this could be the very beginning for you of a whole new life? Know that I'm here for you, and yeah, I'm on your team. And if there's any ways that I can help, please feel free to reach out to me. God bless you all.